What is up, harvesters? Welcome back to the returning viewers. If you're brand new here, welcome to Hobby Harvest. My name is Ken. So today I want to talk to you guys about the 6 biggest mistakes that I have made in my 27 years of deer hunting. So hopefully you can learn from those mistakes, skip that huge learning curve that I took maybe a decade or longer to learn, and just hop right in without having to make these mistakes yourself. So number 1, stop disturbing your attractions in order to hunt them. Now, what I mean by this is if you're hunting, say, public, or even if it is private, and you find an area where it's like, great, I got deer trails crisscrossing through here, I have a scrape in here, I need to get a stand in here, I need to open up some shooting lanes, I need to get some cameras in here, I need to get this log out of here, I need to get that branch out of here, I need to disturb this whole area of the woods, and now I'm going to hunt it. Well, guess what? That buck that was running that scrape, those deer that were coming through there are now going to come into that area and be like, whoa, what's going on here? Somebody tore this whole place apart. I don't feel comfortable coming through here anymore. So you want to try to keep those natural attractions in the woods as natural as possible. Get in there, slide in there, put a stand up if you need to, and hunt it. Don't worry about putting the cams up and getting everything perfect in there. Now, if you're doing this in July, great. I mean, don't do this the week before the season and then expect the deer to be moving through here. Yes, definitely July, work on your habitat improvements. August into September even, if you're not planning on hunting that very early part of the bow season. But you know, get those habitat improvements done while it's not the season. If you're doing this right before the season starts, it's not the time of year to be in there kicking stuff around, moving stuff around. Just wait until the next season to do that stuff now that you've found this area of the woods, but just hunt it that first season. Now, the other thing here is once I started putting in food plots and building my own attractions on private, I'd get out there and I'd want to check the camera, so I'd go pull some chips on cameras. I'd go out and I'd want to make sure that that mock scrape was nice and roughed up underneath so there's fresh scented dirt coming out. I even used to go put scents out in the woods and stuff. We'll get into more of that a little bit later in the video. But I used to go out there and be wandering around in the woods. Like, don't do that. Just get in your stand and hunt. Don't worry about the chip on the camera. Don't worry about freshening up that mock scrape. Everything's fine. Your goal when you're there to hunt is slip in and slip out undetected. Don't worry about all that other stuff. Just get in there, get out, stop disturbing your attractions. You're putting your scent all over those attractions that you worked so hard on, and now you're hoping the deer come into them, and they're going to smell all that scent that you put all over out there, and they're going to come to the edge of them and then turn around and go the other way, maybe before you even see them coming in, depending on how thick the area is. Now, the second thing, the biggest mistake I made was not taking into account your ingress and egress out of that stand. So while you're trying to get in and out of your stand, you also need to be worried about your wind direction. Not just wind direction when you're on stand, that's not dumping off to where you expect the deer to be coming from. You don't want to be accessing in and having your scent dump down into a bedding area that's maybe 50 yards down a hill or 100 yards down a hill, or just off in that general direction altogether, and then get into that stand and expect those deer to come up out of there. You need to be very conscious of where your wind's blowing and where you're walking in the woods when you're getting in and out of your stands. When I think back of how we used to hunt my Northwest Wisconsin property, I just cringe at this time. We always kind of thought that the deeper you hunt in the woods, the bigger buck you're going to shoot. And I know a lot of hunters have that misconception. Now, on public land, yeah, you got to get away from the noise of the other hunters, and sometimes that means just going deeper into the woods. But on private, that's not the plan. Today, all of our stands are within sight of the road. Yeah, maybe not perfect sight. You're definitely looking through the trees, but if a car drives by, every single one of our stands is going to see a portion of that car at some point while it drives by. Most of our stands are between 50 to 100 yards off the edge of the road. The reason for that is we are not disturbing our entire woods. We are only disturbing that 50 to 100 yard chunk immediately adjacent to the road. In order to hunt the property, it leaves the whole back end of that property completely untouched, where of course there's bedding areas and cover and things for the deer to hold up in before they're drawn back out to our positions. So our positions are set up either on lines of movement that are going to head back into those bedding areas, or they're set up on food sources where they're going to come out of those bedding areas to those food sources. But the whole point of this is while we hunt, there is not a footstep of ours that goes beyond probably that 100-yard line parallel to the road, unless of course we're going in there to retrieve a kill, which of course we did this year. I was lucky enough to get a nice 8-pointer opening day. Another nice 8-pointer was shot out of that same stand 2 days later during the gun deer season. We exclusively hunt that property for gun. I hunt a different property for bow season down in southeastern Wisconsin. But we had a good hunt up there, and the whole thing was to not put all that extra pressure deeper into the woods. And now in that 50 to 100 yards that we're going off of the woods, we're also making sure we're using topography to dip down into a low spot and then come back up onto some higher ground. So while we're down in that low spot, the deer that are deeper in the woods can't even see us because we're being hidden by that hill that we're walking up the back side of, ultimately to sit and hunt on the top of it in a stand there. The other thing is, of course, that's going to hide our wind. Our wind's going to be down in that low area. So in the afternoon, it's going to just keep and drop. The thermals are going to drop it down into that hole and hold it down there. So it's kind of stuck there. And then the other thing is, of course, these stands are all set up with the predominant winds in mind so that we're blowing our scent back towards the road instead of back into the woods where we expect the deer to come from. That, of course, can all go whatever way it wants. The deer are still wild animals. I've shot a bunch of bucks who walked in on the trail that I walked in on less than an hour of when I walked in on them, including the one that I shot this year. There was 2 of us walked in like this, parallel to each other. There's a pocket of thicker cover in the middle. He was bedded down in there. He got up completely undetected, wandered out onto the food source, had his head down more than he had it up. He was not at all alerted to our presence, and took the shot, and that was the end of that. But it just shows that if you get in and out of your stands very stealthily, quiet, and making sure you're aware of your wind and the sight that you're projecting out into the woods, meaning stay in cover, stay behind a hill if you can while you're walking in. It's a great way to make sure that you're not projecting yourself to the entire woods, because if you do that, any deer that can see, hear, or smell you are going to go the other way as soon as they decide they're going to get up and move if they are bedded down, or they're just going to turn around and go the other way, and you're not going to see them. They can see, hear, and smell better than you can. They will see you way before you see them. Maybe you'll get that white flag waving at you as they run the other way, which is like a big middle finger out there to you. But the other thing is, if you are doing that, you're now relying on deer that were a quarter, a half, 3/4 a mile away to come in all the way to you, because you already scared away the deer that were immediately adjacent to you. And most of the time, the deer that you're going to harvest are the ones that are the closest to you when you get into the stand, because they don't move all that fast coming through the woods unless they're spooked. And lastly on that point is moving at the wrong time of the day. So a lot of guys will know about your AM and PM sits. You don't want to be walking through a bedding area in the middle of the day to get to a PM sit, because the deer should be in that bedding area. So just make sure, again, you are walking in an area of the woods that you're not going to disturb deer going in and out. Just make sure that you are moving at those right times of day. You don't want to get out there 3 hours before first light only to get cold and you're walking out an hour after it got light out. You'd be much better off getting out there 15 minutes before it got light out and sitting 3 hours after it got light out. Just keep that in mind. I know a lot of guys are like, gotta get in the woods, I gotta sneak in the dark. Most of the deer I shoot, I'm in there less than an hour. They walk through, it's broad daylight. I don't necessarily need to get in there 3 hours, an hour, 2 hours, whatever, before first light. If you want to do that, great. I kind of see those as wasted hours in the stand, but if it works for you, I'm happy for you. I've just had success without having to do that. You want to make sure you're out there for daylight hours. So if you're getting cold or whatever and you're going out way early before it gets light out, you want to instead shift those hours during daylight hours so you can actually shoot, not be sitting out there in the dark freezing your butt off. Now the third thing is hunting a stand in a bad wind simply because it's your stand. So I know a lot of guys that hunt, they have their stand, they have one stand, they've hunted that stand for 50 years, some of these old timers. I always sit out there on that spot and I shot myself a big 10-pointer back in the 70s and I haven't seen a deer there since. Yeah, there's a lot of those old hunters. Make sure you're only hunting these stands when it's the right wind to hunt them. So a good opportunity, if you have a nice funnel, let's say, is to have a stand on this side of the funnel and a stand on this side of the funnel if you're on private so that you can hunt either side depending on your wind. So you want to hunt that specific attraction, but you can hunt wherever the wind's best for you. You are actually much better off if you only have one stand out there over an attraction and you are dead set on hunting that attraction to sit on the ground on the other side of it than you are to sit in the stand on the bad side of it with the wind dumping right into it. So just make sure you guys are aware of what the wind is doing that day. If it's an AM or a PM sit, which stand you're going to. I know a lot of guys don't have enough room, they don't have enough time, they don't have whatever to put out all these different stands in the woods. I don't have a ton of them out there either, but just make sure you are conscious that you aren't creating a bad situation for yourself by going out there and blowing out all of the deer in the area simply because you needed to hunt your stand at a bad time in a bad wind or whatever it is. Now, fourth, I want to talk about the attraction scents and all of the drippers and all of the stuff. I spent so many years, my first few years hunting, going out. I would tie a little string with a cotton ball to a branch. I would go out there, I would put a little doe pee on it. Every time I walked into the stand, I would go and freshen those up. All I was doing is painting my own scent throughout the whole area. A buck is not going to come into one of those drippers. Usually that scent is too rich for them. For the most part, if you can smell it, that means they aren't going to like it. Most of the stuff they're attracted to, you cannot even smell. They have such a higher sense of smell than you do. So what I do now is I have a mock scrape out there. Now those deer come in, they rub on that mock scrape, and that's what brings them into the area. So for example, how my stand, and I just said not to say your stand, but where I shot my buck out of this year is set up with a mock scrape between two food plots that are off maybe 50 to 100 yards on either side of this. That is sort of a line of movement through the woods here. They're all the dots are kind of connected of these attractions to force the deer to move through the property a certain way. So what happened is the guy who shot the second buck out of that stand this year, he had about a dozen deer come in while he harvested that buck. He had does, fawns. There was actually a bigger buck in the group. He just didn't see it. That buck was more on the tail end, maybe 100 yards through the woods. One of our other guys saw that buck blazing through the woods at 150 yards. There's no way he had a shot on him after the shot was taken on this other one. But what happened is all of these deer came in. Now, we have the ability to bait with corn up there, so we do use corn, but not as a attraction per se. And I should probably make an entire video on how we use corn to kind of deal with our does and fawns over here, especially after dark. If you guys have ever noticed, you probably put corn out and you get a lot of nocturnal pictures on a corn source. So what we do is we put our corn pile over here out of the way to keep the does and fawns over there at night, which allows our bucks onto our food plots and lets them feel more comfortable. They're not getting pushed around by all these doe and fawn groups on the food plot. So what happened is all these deer came in. So we have corn over there, we got food plot over there, we got food plot over there, we got mock scrape here, we got all this stuff going on. Where'd the deer go? To the food plot and to the mock scrape. They didn't mess with the corn pile, and of course we didn't even have any doe scent out there because it just has never been something that gets those bucks in the mood or gets them coming into an area. Again, I've said that, well, you're out there spreading all that doe scent, you're just spreading your own scent out there as well, and that tends to have a much bigger negative effect than whatever that doe scent's going to be bringing into the area. So of course, the deer like those more, natural attractions as much as the mock scrape's not a natural attraction, but they like that. All that scent that is on that is just their own scent. Kick up the dirt underneath it, and away it goes. Same with the food plots that they're out there growing. They like that type of food source better than the corn pile that's over there. That corn pile attracts a bunch of does and fawns all night long. But what it does, by bringing all of them in, we don't need all those other scents. So I don't use any cover scent. I don't use any scent killers. I don't use any detergent or whatever, anything that the big box stores are trying to sell you to steal your money. I don't use any of that. During early bow season, I grab a hoodie out of the closet, throw it on, and I go out and sit. And I have deer 10 yards in front of me that don't even know I'm there. And that hoodie's washed with whatever detergent my wife bought that was on sale that week. It's not scentless. It's not whatever. If you guys are buying all of those products, maybe they help a little bit, but they definitely are not required. just be conscious of which direction your wind is blowing, and then it doesn't matter what you stink like because your wind isn't even going to hit the nostrils of the deer. Now, on the other side, like I said, the attractive scents, I don't see that they work. They sell you guys everything out there. I saw stuff that you light on fire and it smokes, and that's supposed to bring deer in. I have a hard time believing that that's true. Obviously, there's guys out there that are going to buy every new little piece of gear and gadget, and that's who these marketing companies are targeting because they know these guys are going to go buy that stuff. Now, number 5, we already kind of talked about this, but that is sitting the same stand in the morning and the afternoon. Make sure you are aware of if you have a morning stand that is relating to a bedding area, or you have an afternoon stand that is relating to a food area. So I also do not like to sit directly on top of those attractions. That's something I've done in the past. You want to hunt the bedding area, you sit right in the bedding area. You want to hunt the food source, you sit right on top of the food source. I now have my property set up that there are funnels and man-made deer trails and lines of movement set up that take the deer from the bedding area to the food source, vice versa, and you hunt right on that pinch point between the two of them, not directly on top of the attractions themselves. Now, there are very few stands that are both a morning and an afternoon stand. Those are typically going to be ones that have food sources adjacent to them, but are also very thick lines of cover. So like I said earlier, I have that property set up where there are intentional connect the dots attractions that travel through the property to make the deer move through a very specific part of the property. So what happens is in the morning, while the deer are returning to their bedding area, they move through that thick part of the woods, which there also happen to be food sources. Now, they may graze quickly through those food sources as they return to their bedding area, but very often they give no mind to those food sources as they're just trying to stick in that thick chunk of the woods, get to that bedding area and get bedded down. Now, in the afternoon, they mosey on back out and then do hit up those food sources. So that's a situation where these stands can be AM and PM stands. But in most situations, you're going to want to be closer to that bedding area in the morning. You want to be closer to that food source in the afternoon. And of course, the mode of transportation, the trail that goes between them on those highways that you're putting out there or that they're creating, that's where you want to sit. That's where you want to put your cameras too. You want to make sure they're walking right by those cameras, right by your stand to get to that attraction rather than hunting on that entire attraction altogether. Now, number 6 is trail cams. Now, I could put out an entire video of all the mistakes I've made with trail cameras. I've been running them since they were those big black boxes that were just filled with D batteries. Those things were so heavy. They took really horrible quality pictures. But there was a new technology. You could actually see what the deer were doing when you weren't there. It was awesome. So I've been running them since then. I've got awesome HD camera ones out there. Now I run them on video instead of photo. And it's just been awesome to see the technology increase in trail cameras over the years. Of course, we have cell cams now as well. You don't even have to be in the woods to check your cameras. But one of the biggest mistakes that I've made with cameras is how often you check them. So I would put cameras out and I would want to check them. Obviously, this is before cell cams. And I still have some cameras that aren't cell cams, so I still have to pull the chips out of them. I would go out there, and before I hunted, I would pull the chips out because I wanted to see what happened before I hunted. Horrible idea. Trail cameras only show you where the deer were. They don't show you where the deer are going to be. So if you're going out to hunt, just go out and hunt. Who cares what your trail cameras show? Because they're not going to show you anything that's going to be new or future information. What's going to be new and future information is going to be what you see from that stand. And the other important thing while we're on trail cameras is that trail camera only sees this little portion of the woods. When you're standing in that stand, you see all of the woods. Hopefully, if you're not sitting on your phone like this the whole time. But you see the whole woods. You are seeing everything. There are so many deer that move through an area that never cross in front of that trail cam because they just wandered a little bit this way or they just never came through that way. They crisscrossed left or right of it. So just keep in mind that when you're going out to hunt, go out to hunt. Don't go out to check your cams. I've spent way too much time doing that. All you're doing is painting your scent all over the place, Plus you're making that unnatural like metal on plastic noise of opening up the camera and whatever and sliding the chip out, putting a new chip in. It's just unnecessary motion and scent out in the woods. Don't do that. Just get out there, hunt, check your cameras when you need to. If, for example, you shoot something, you wound it, and it runs by a camera, go pull that camera and see what it saw as that deer ran by. It's a good opportunity while you're hunting to use them. Otherwise, as soon as the season starts during gun deer season, those cameras don't get checked until I leave for the season. I don't care what's happening out there during the season. We just go out and hunt, and we see what we see. And if you want to know what's going on in your area, you ask the other hunters, hey, what did you see while you sat out there? I saw this, I saw this, I saw a doe and fawn. They kind of headed over by you. Yeah, I saw them too. They came through, and then they went off that way for a while, and then they wandered back about an hour later, or whatever. It's much better intelligence than trying to go pull these cameras throughout the entire season. Just let them sit out there, let them soak. You can pull them when you're done, or if you need to, like I said, if you shot something, you wounded it, go check the cameras that were off in that direction where it ran. Maybe get a good idea of where it went or whatever. But just stop trying to pull chips all the time and check cams and go out, you know, the day before opening morning to check to see what was going on. And that is a good opening morning is so sacred, especially for gun deer season. Just stay out of the woods. Don't go out there busting all that stuff up. And the other thing that trail cameras can really bust you on is the deer that you're seeing on camera in the summer or early fall are not the deer that are going to be in your area come late fall into winter. And the reason for that is the natural habitat around you is changing. So when those bucks are in velvet, they're trying to stay in an area of the woods that is not very thick, so they're not racking their velvet on anything. Then they're going to head to a thick area of the woods once they do grow out of that velvet. So you're going to find them completely shift where they are from summer to fall. The other thing is food sources and cover sources change as you head into fall. All the leaves fall off. What was the thickest part of the woods because it had big lush leaves on it is now not the thickest part of the woods. It's this chunk over here that's got all those little stems from like regenerative growth or whatever. So the deer are going to change where they were bedding. They're going to change the food sources they were coming into. This is why I talk about putting in food plots and making sure those food plots are focused on fall growth. You want young, tender plants in your food plots during the fall, not all summer long, because that's going to be the top food attraction in your area, and that's where all the deer are going to come in and focus on that food source. So that's how you're going to get those deer into your area in the late fall. And if you're also trying to create cover, get that stem count high, not that leaf count high, because that's what fall during the hunting season when we can hunt, that's what they're going to be attracted to. So just because you had stuff on your cameras all summer long does not mean those are the deer you're going to have there during the hunting season. So just again, a mistake that I have made in the past is, oh, I got this deer in here in August. We're going to have a good November. That's not at all how that works. Just make sure you guys know how trail cameras work. They know what was there, not what's going to be there, and don't mess up today's hunt by needing to get out there and check your cameras. Just check them later. The photos aren't going anywhere. If you guys feel like you got some value out of this video, go ahead, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you enjoyed this video, YouTube thinks you're going to enjoy this one. Otherwise, go check out this one, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.